Mother Bear collapsed on the hospital steps. The baby's next move shocked onlookers. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Every bit of your support helps us create even more amazing stories for you. Rain poured down on the small mountain town of Pine Ridge as thunder rumbled in the distance. Oliver Reed stood at the window of his cabin, watching the storm grow fiercer by the minute. The 32-year-old wildlife photographer had moved to these woods 6 months ago, hoping to capture the beauty of nature in all its forms. But nothing could have prepared him for what he would witness that day. Oliver's 1-year-old son, Noah, played on the floor with wooden blocks, occasionally looking up at his father with curious blue eyes. The cabin felt especially cozy that evening, with the sound of raindrops hammering against the roof and the warm glow of the fireplace casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Just you and me tonight, buddy," Oliver said, ruffling Noah's soft blonde hair. His wife, Diana, had left for the city earlier that day to visit her sister who had just given birth. Oliver didn't mind the alone time with his son. These quiet moments were precious. As night fell, the storm only grew stronger. Wind howled through the trees, and branches scratched against the windows like desperate fingers. Oliver had just put Noah to bed when he heard a strange sound from outside, something between a growl and a moan. He froze, his hand still resting on Noah's tiny back. The sound came again, louder this time. Oliver carefully moved to the window and peered out into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing but rain and shadows. Then, a flash of lightning illuminated the yard, and his heart stopped. A large brown bear was stumbling toward the cabin, moving in an unnatural way. The animal seemed disoriented, possibly injured. Oliver's first instinct was to grab his phone, but there was no signal. The storm had taken down the cell towers. He looked back at Noah, peacefully sleeping in his crib, completely unaware of the danger approaching their home. Oliver knew he needed to protect his son, but he couldn't ignore the suffering animal outside either. The bear collapsed just yards from the cabin steps, its massive body heaving with each labored breath. Another flash of lightning revealed something that made Oliver's blood run cold. The bear wasn't alone. A tiny cub peeked out from behind its mother, nudging her still form with desperate little paws. "Oh no," Oliver whispered, his breath fogging the glass. The mother bear was clearly in distress, and the cub was too young to survive on its own. As a wildlife photographer, Oliver had studied animal behavior enough to know that approaching a wounded bear, especially one with a cub, could be fatal. But something in the mother bear's eyes, visible even through the rain and darkness, called to him on a deeper level. Those eyes held pain, fear, and something unmistakably human. A desperate plea for help. Oliver stood frozen at the window, torn between his duty to keep Noah safe and the undeniable pull to help the suffering creatures outside. The cub continued to nudge its mother, making small, frightened sounds that carried through the howling wind. In that moment, Oliver realized he was witnessing something few humans ever see: the raw, unfiltered love between a mother and her child, transcending species and speaking to the very core of existence. The rain continued to pour as Oliver made a decision that would change everything. He carefully closed Noah's bedroom door and grabbed his emergency medical kit from under the kitchen sink. His hands trembled as he put on his raincoat. What he was about to do defied all logic and safety protocols, but sometimes the heart knows what the mind cannot comprehend. As Oliver reached for the doorknob, a small sound made him turn. Noah stood in the hallway, awake and clutching his favorite stuffed animal, a small, worn teddy bear. The irony wasn't lost on Oliver. His son's innocent eyes seemed to hold a wisdom beyond his years, as if giving silent permission for what his father was about to do. "Stay here, Noah," Oliver said gently, knowing full well his 1-year-old couldn't understand. Yet somehow, the child didn't cry or move closer. He simply stood there, watching his father with those impossibly blue eyes that seemed to contain the entire universe. Oliver took a deep breath and opened the door, stepping out into the storm to face whatever fate awaited him. The mother bear's eyes met his across the yard, and in that electric moment, a connection formed between two parents that transcended the boundaries of species. Whatever happened next would test the limits of compassion, courage, and the unbreakable bond between parent and child. The wind nearly knocked Oliver off his feet as he stepped outside. Cold rain pelted his face, making it difficult to see. He clutched the medical kit tightly against his chest and moved cautiously toward the fallen bear. Each step felt like walking through a dream, surreal and dangerous, yet somehow inevitable. 20 feet away from the bear, Oliver stopped. The massive creature's fur was matted with blood on her right side. Even in the dim light, he could see a large gash running along her flank. The cub whimpered and pawed at its mother, its small body shivering from the cold and fear. "Easy there," Oliver whispered, though his words were swallowed by the howling wind. "I just want to help." The mother bear's eyes followed him, but she made no attempt to rise. Her breathing was labored, each exhale creating a small cloud in the cold night air. Oliver had seen enough injured wildlife to know this was serious, possibly a deep wound from a fight with another predator or a jagged branch during the storm. A crash from inside the cabin made Oliver spin around. To his horror, he saw Noah standing in the open doorway, clutching his teddy bear. The child had somehow managed to push the door open and was now staring wide-eyed at the scene before him. "Noah, stay back!" Oliver shouted, his heart racing with fear. But instead of crying or retreating, Noah did something that stopped time itself. The toddler let go of his stuffed bear and took a wobbly step outside, his eyes fixed not on his father, but on the bear cub. There was something in his expression, a complete absence of fear, replaced with pure, innocent curiosity. Before Oliver could move, a deafening crack split the air. A massive pine tree, weakened by the storm, began to fall directly toward the cabin. Oliver watched in frozen terror as the massive trunk descended toward the spot where Noah stood. "Noah!" he screamed, lunging toward his son. Time slowed to a crawl. Oliver knew he wouldn't reach Noah in time. In that terrible moment, something impossible happened. The mother bear, seemingly summoning her last reserves of strength, lurched to her feet and moved with surprising speed. With one powerful motion, she swatted Noah aside with her paw, not in aggression, but with the precise force needed to push him clear of the falling tree's path. The tree crashed down with a thunderous boom, missing Noah by inches. The child landed in a muddy puddle, stunned but unharmed. Oliver reached him in seconds, scooping him up and checking frantically for injuries. Miraculously, there wasn't a scratch on him. When Oliver looked up, the mother bear had collapsed again, the effort clearly draining what little strength she had left. Her eyes remained fixed on them, and in their dark depths, Oliver saw something unmistakable, the same instinct that would have made him sacrifice everything for his own child. "She saved him," Oliver whispered in disbelief. "She saved my son." The rain continued to pour as Oliver held Noah tightly against his chest. The fallen tree had blocked the cabin door, trapping them outside with the injured bear and her cub. The closest neighbor was miles away, and with the storm raging, no help would be coming soon. Oliver looked down at the medical kit in his hand, then back at the bear. He was no veterinarian, but he knew enough first aid to possibly help stabilize her. The risk was immense. Even injured, a mother bear protecting her cub was one of nature's most dangerous forces. But this bear had just saved his son's life. He owed her everything. "We have to help her, buddy," he said softly to Noah, who was surprisingly calm in his arms. "She helped us." Noah reached out a small hand toward the bear cub, babbling something in his baby language. The cub, perhaps sensing no threat from this small human, stopped its frantic pacing and stared back with equal curiosity. Oliver set Noah down under the partial shelter of a pine tree, making sure he was safe but close enough to watch. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he approached the injured bear again. Her breathing had grown more shallow, her eyes beginning to glaze over. Whatever he was going to do, he needed to do it quickly. As Oliver knelt beside the massive creature, he was struck by the absurdity of the situation. Here he was, in the middle of a storm, trying to save a wild bear that had just saved his son. It defied all logic, all wilderness training, all survival instincts. Yet somehow, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. He opened the medical kit and took out antiseptic, gauze, and bandages. "This is going to sting," he murmured to the bear, surprising himself with how naturally he spoke to her, as if she could understand. "But I promise, I'm trying to help." Just as Oliver was about to clean the wound, headlights cut through the darkness. A truck was making its way up the muddy road to the cabin. Relief flooded through him, until he saw the rifle mounted in the truck's back window. It was Hank Wilson, the local game warden, known for his strict adherence to protocol when it came to dangerous wildlife. The truck stopped, and Hank stepped out, immediately spotting Oliver kneeling beside the bear. His weathered face registered shock, then alarm. "Oliver, get away from that animal right now." Hank raised his rifle, taking aim at the mother bear. "No!" Oliver stood up, placing himself between Hank's rifle and the bear. "She's injured, not aggressive. She just saved my son's life." Hank's eyes narrowed skeptically. "That's impossible." "Step aside, Oliver. That bear is suffering and dangerous. You know the protocol." A tense standoff ensued, rain pouring down between the two men. Behind Oliver, the mother bear's breathing grew more labored. Behind Hank, another set of headlights appeared on the road. It was Dr. Layla Kumar, the town's veterinarian, who had been returning from a late-night emergency call when she spotted Hank's truck. Layla quickly assessed the situation and rushed over, her medical bag in hand. "Lower your weapon, Hank," she commanded, with the authority that came from years of dealing with both animals and stubborn men. "Let me take a look before you do anything drastic." As Layla knelt beside the bear, examining the wound with practiced efficiency, the cub cautiously approached Noah, who still sat quietly under the tree. The two young ones regarded each other with matching expressions of innocent curiosity. "The wound is deep but clean," Layla announced after a moment. "Looks like she caught herself on something sharp, maybe barbed wire from the old Peterson property. With proper treatment, she could survive." "And do what?" Hank demanded. "We can't have an injured wild bear this close to town, especially one with a cub." "There's the wildlife sanctuary up in North Ridge," Layla suggested. "They have facilities for rehabilitation. If we can stabilize her and transport her there." While the adults debated, something extraordinary was happening between Noah and the bear cub. The tiny creatures had moved closer to each other, seemingly communicating in a language without words. Noah offered his teddy bear to the cub, who sniffed it curiously. Oliver noticed the interaction and felt a lump form in his throat. In the middle of chaos and danger, his son was demonstrating the purest form of compassion, offering comfort to another scared child, regardless of species. "Look," Oliver said softly, pointing to the cubs. Even Hank fell silent at the sight. The simple gesture seemed to cut through all the tension and fear, reminding them of something essential about connection that transcended human reasoning. In that moment, a series of loud cracks echoed through the forest. More trees were giving way under the strain of the storm. One crashed down across the road, blocking both vehicles. They were all trapped now, humans and bears alike, with no way out until the storm passed. Layla looked up at the sky, then back at the injured bear. We need to make a decision quickly. This animal needs immediate care if she's going to survive the night. Oliver looked at his son playing with the bear cub, then at the mother bear who had saved Noah's life. The choice seemed clear to him, though it defied all conventional wisdom. Sometimes, he realized, the heart knew what the mind could not comprehend. "We need to save her," he said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Little did any of them know that this night would test not just their survival skills, but their very understanding of the connection between humans and the wild. As the storm raged around them, the true challenge was just beginning, and the mother bear's condition was worsening by the minute. "We need to move her somewhere dry," Layla said, her medical training taking over. "This rain will only worsen her condition." Hank lowered his rifle, but didn't put it away entirely. "The cabin's blocked by that fallen tree? Where exactly do you suggest we take a 400-pound injured bear?" Oliver scanned their surroundings. The darkness made it difficult to see, but a flash of lightning illuminated an old shed about 50 yards from the cabin. He'd been using it to store photography equipment and supplies. "There," he pointed. "My shed. It's not much, but it's dry and has electricity from the solar panels I installed last month." Layla nodded. "Perfect. But we'll need something to transport her." Hank sighed heavily, rain dripping from his hat. "I've got a tarp in my truck. We could use it as a stretcher, but even with all three of us, moving her won't be easy." While the adults discussed logistics, Noah had somehow coaxed the bear cub to sit beside him under the tree. The small creature seemed to trust the human child instinctively, perhaps sensing they shared the same fear for their parents. "Noah, stay right there, buddy," Oliver called out, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Dad's going to help the bear mommy, okay?" Noah looked up and nodded solemnly, as if he understood perfectly the gravity of the situation. The bear cub nuzzled against his side, both of them watching with identical expressions of worry. Hank retrieved the tarp from his truck, and the three adults approached the mother bear cautiously. Her eyes followed them, but she made no aggressive movements. Her breathing had become even more labored, and fresh blood seeped from her wound. "On three," Hank instructed as they positioned the tarp beside the bear. "1, 2, 3. With tremendous effort, they managed to roll the massive animal onto the makeshift stretcher. The bear let out a pained groan but didn't resist. Whether from weakness or some deeper understanding, she seemed to accept their help. "Noah, come here," Oliver called, realizing they couldn't leave his son alone. "Bring your new friend if you want." To everyone's amazement, Noah stood up, and the bear cub followed him, staying close to his legs like a loyal puppy. The sight was so incongruous that even Hank paused to stare. "I've been a game warden for 20 years, he muttered, "and I've never seen anything like this." Together, they struggled through the rain and mud toward the shed, carrying the heavy bear on the tarp. Noah and the cub followed several paces behind, the child occasionally stopping to make sure his animal companion was keeping up. The shed was cramped but dry. Photography equipment lined one wall, while camping gear and emergency supplies occupied another. Oliver quickly cleared a space in the center, laying down some old blankets where they could place the bear. I need better light, Layla said, as they carefully lowered the bear onto the blankets. Oliver found his battery-powered lanterns and positioned them around the wounded animal. Under the bright light, the injury looked even worse. The gash was deep and long, running from the bear's shoulder down her side. "Is she going to die?" Oliver asked quietly, conscious of Noah watching from the doorway, the cub still by his side. Layla's face was grim as she opened her medical bag. "I won't lie to you, it's bad. She's lost a lot of blood, and there's a risk of infection. In a proper clinic, with the right equipment, but here, with what I have..." She didn't need to finish. They all understood the odds weren't good. "What do you need?" Oliver asked. "Tell me, and I'll find it." Layla thought for a moment. "Antibiotics, for starters. Strong ones. And something to stitch this wound. My emergency kit has some basics, but not enough for an injury this severe. I have some veterinary supplies at my station," Hank offered unexpectedly. "Standard issue for wildlife emergencies, but with that tree blocking the road..." "There's another way," Oliver said, moving to a map pinned to the shed wall. "An old logging trail runs behind my property. It connects to the main road about 2 miles east of here. In good weather, it's passable by ATV. In case you haven't noticed." Hank gestured toward the door where rain continued to pour. "This isn't good weather." "What choice do we have?" Oliver challenged. "We can't just let her die, not after..." He glanced at Noah, who was now sitting on the floor, gently petting the cub's head. A conflicted expression crossed Hank's face. As game warden, his job was to follow protocol, to make the hard decisions that kept both wildlife and humans safe. But this situation defied all protocols. He looked at the bear cub, then at Noah, then finally at the mother bear fighting for her life. "If I take that trail, I'll need to know exactly where I'm going," he said finally. "One wrong turn in this weather and I could end up stranded or worse. I'll go with you," Oliver volunteered immediately. "No," Layla interjected firmly. "I need you here. That solar setup, I'll need help rigging something for emergency surgery, and someone needs to watch Noah." Before they could debate further, a soft voice spoke from the doorway. "I'll go with him." They turned to see a woman standing there, dripping wet and slightly breathless. It was Diana, Oliver's wife, her eyes wide as she took in the bizarre scene before her. Her husband and the town veterinarian hovering over an injured bear. Her son sitting calmly with a bear cub, and the game warden holding his rifle at rest. "Diana!" Oliver exclaimed, rushing to embrace her. "How did you..." "The storm was getting worse, so I decided to come home early," she explained quickly. "The main road was blocked about a mile down, so I parked and hiked the rest. I saw the lights in the shed and..." She gestured helplessly at the scene. "What on earth is happening here?" As quickly as possible, Oliver explained the extraordinary events of the evening. Diana listened with increasing astonishment, her eyes darting between her son and the bears. "The mother bear saved Noah?" she repeated, struggling to process this information. "And now you're trying to save her? I know it sounds crazy," Oliver admitted. Diana took a deep breath, then surprised everyone by nodding firmly. "Not crazy, right?" She turned to Hank. "I grew up in these mountains. I know that logging trail better than anyone. If you're going for supplies, I'm coming with you." Hank looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. "We'll take my truck as far as we can, then hike if necessary." "Be careful," Oliver urged, embracing his wife again. "The storm's getting worse." "I'll be fine," Diana assured him. "Just keep Noah safe and do what you can for her." She nodded toward the bear, who watched the humans with eyes clouded by pain but still alert. As Diana and Hank prepared to leave, Gathering flashlights and rain gear, Noah did something unexpected. He stood up and walked over to his mother, the bear cub following close behind. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, smooth stone, a worry stone that Diana had given him on his first birthday. He pressed it into her hand with solemn intensity. "I think he wants you to take it with you," Oliver said softly. "For luck." Diana knelt down to Noah's level, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, baby. I'll bring it back to you, I promise." She kissed his forehead and stood up, slipping the stone into her pocket. With one last look at her family, Diana followed Hank out into the storm. The shed door closed behind them, leaving Oliver, Layla, Noah, and the bears in a strange suspended moment of uncertainty. "All right," Layla said, refocusing on the injured bear. "Let's do what we can while we wait for those supplies. I need clean water, any alcohol you might have for disinfectant, and all the clean cloths you can find." Oliver moved quickly, gathering supplies from around the shed. As he worked, he kept glancing at Noah, who had returned to his spot beside the bear cub. The two small figures sat in peaceful companionship, seemingly oblivious to the drama unfolding around them. Layla began cleaning the wound as best she could with their limited supplies. The mother bear growled softly at the pain but made no attempt to attack. She seemed to understand, on some primal level, that these humans were trying to help. "It's remarkable," Layla murmured as she worked. "In normal circumstances, a mother bear would never allow humans this close to her cub, and she certainly wouldn't tolerate us touching her while injured." "Nothing about this night has been normal," Oliver replied, helping to hold gauze in place as Layla continued cleaning the wound. Outside, the wind howled with renewed fury, rattling the shed's windows. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating Noah and the cub through the window. In that frozen moment of electric light, Oliver saw something that made his breath catch. The cub was leaning against Noah, their foreheads touching in what looked unmistakably like a gesture of comfort. "Look," he whispered to Layla. She glanced up and stared, her hands momentarily stilling. I don't even have words for what that is." "It's trust," Oliver said simply. "Pure trust." Just then, the mother bear let out a pained moan and began to shake. Her eyes rolled back, and her massive body convulsed. "She's going into shock," Layla said urgently. "We're losing her." Oliver felt panic rise in his chest. What can we do? Keep her warm, talk to her. Sometimes the sound of a calm voice can help stabilize an animal in distress. Layla worked frantically, trying to stop the renewed bleeding from the wound. But without those antibiotics and proper equipment, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Without the supplies Diana and Hank had gone to retrieve, the mother bear wouldn't survive the night. As if sensing his mother's distress, the bear cub let out a mournful cry and tried to approach. Noah held him back, somehow understanding that the cub might get in the way of the adults trying to help. Oliver knelt beside the mother bear's head, placing a gentle hand on her rough fur. "Stay with us," he murmured. "Your cub needs you. You saved my son. Now let me save you." For a moment, the bear's eyes focused on him, and Oliver felt that same connection he'd experienced earlier. Two parents, from entirely different worlds, understanding each other in a language beyond words. Meanwhile, Diana and Hank were fighting their own battle against the elements. The logging trail had turned into a muddy river, forcing them to abandon the truck much sooner than anticipated. They trudged through ankle-deep mud, flashlights providing meager illumination against the pitch-black forest. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Hank shouted over the wind. Diana nodded, though doubt had begun to creep in. The storm had transformed familiar landmarks into unrecognizable shadows. She clutched Noah's worry stone in her pocket, drawing strength from the connection to her son. "There should be a fork up ahead," she called back. We go left, but when they reached the spot, both paths looked equally unwelcoming. Dark tunnels cutting through dense forest, both partially flooded. "Which way?" Hank demanded, his patience wearing thin. Diana hesitated. Choosing wrong could mean getting lost in the woods during the worst storm in years. Choosing wrong could mean the mother bear's death. Choosing wrong could mean... A strange sound cut through the howling wind, a distant howl that made both humans freeze. Wolves. The local pack rarely came this close to human habitation, but the storm might have displaced them from their usual territory. "We need to move," Hank urged, his hand moving instinctively to his rifle. Diana closed her eyes, squeezing the worry stone in her pocket. When she opened them, she pointed decisively to the left path. "This way, I'm sure of it." As they pushed forward, neither noticed the dark shapes moving parallel to them in the forest, yellow eyes tracking their progress with predatory interest. Back at the shed, the mother bear's condition had stabilized somewhat, but Layla's expression remained grave. "She's fighting," she told Oliver quietly, "but without those antibiotics..." A bone-chilling howl echoed through the forest, audible even over the storm. Oliver's head snapped up, and he exchanged an alarmed look with Layla. "Wolves," she whispered. "They must have smelled the blood." Oliver moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. Diana and Hank are out there. The realization hung in the air between them. The night had just become even more dangerous, and the fragile web of lives connected by this extraordinary situation had grown more complex. The mother bear continued to struggle for breath on the shed floor, while outside, new threats emerged from the storm-racked forest. Noah, seemingly oblivious to the adults' concerns, hugged the bear cub close. In that innocent embrace lay perhaps the truest understanding of what was at stake. Not just lives, but the rare and precious bridge that had formed between two worlds that normally existed in careful separation. Another howl, closer this time, sent a shiver down Oliver's spine. Time was running out, for the mother bear, for Diana and Hank in the woods, and perhaps for all of them as the storm and its dangers closed in around the small shed that had become their sanctuary and their battleground. Diana clutched the worry stone so tightly her knuckles turned white. The wolves' howls echoed through the forest, seemingly coming from all directions at once. She and Hank had been trudging through the mud for nearly 40 minutes, the rain showing no signs of letting up. "We should be close to the road by now," she said, trying to keep the doubt from her voice. "Just past this ridge." Hank nodded grimly, his rifle ready. "Those wolves are tracking us. We need to move faster." They pushed forward, each step a battle against the thick mud that threatened to pull off their boots. Diana's thoughts kept returning to the image of her son, sitting calmly beside a bear cub, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Nothing about this night made sense, yet somehow it felt like they were all part of something profound and important. A flash of lightning revealed the road ahead, and Diana felt a surge of hope. There, we made it. But when they reached the spot, their hearts sank. A large tree had fallen across the road here too, and on the other side was a county maintenance truck, its hazard lights blinking weakly in the storm. A figure approached them, wielding a powerful flashlight. "Hey, you folks shouldn't be out in this." It was Elijah Carter, the county road supervisor. He looked exhausted, his uniform soaked through. "Elijah," Hank called out, recognizing him. "Thank God. We need to get to my station. It's an emergency." Quickly, they explained the situation. Elijah's eyebrows rose higher with each detail. "A mother bear saved your boy?" he asked Diana incredulously. "I know how it sounds," she replied. "But it's true, and now she's dying. We need those medical supplies." Elijah ran a hand through his dripping hair. "My crew's been clearing roads all night. We've got equipment that could move this tree, but they're working on the main highway. Won't be back for hours." Another howl, alarmingly close, made them all turn. Yellow eyes reflected in the darkness between the trees. "Into my truck," Elijah ordered. "Now!" They scrambled inside the maintenance vehicle just as several gray forms emerged from the forest edge. The wolves circled the truck, their movements calculated and patient. "They must be desperate to come this close to humans," Elijah observed, starting the engine more for the security of having it running than for any immediate escape. The storm must have driven them from their territory. "Or they're after something else," Hank said quietly, meeting Diana's eyes. "They might have caught the scent of blood. Bear blood." Diana felt ice form in her stomach. Oliver, Noah, and the bears. They're not safe in that shed. Hank nodded grimly. If these wolves picked up the scent from this far away... "We need those supplies more than ever," Diana said urgently, "and we need to warn them." Elijah thought for a moment, then snapped his fingers. "There's a Forest Service station about 3 miles north of here. They'll have a radio powerful enough to reach your cabin, and they might have medical supplies too." "Can we get there?" Hank asked, eyeing the wolves that continued to circle the truck. "Not by road," Elijah admitted, "but I know another way. There's an old fire break that runs parallel to this road. It's rough going, but my truck can handle it." Diana clutched Noah's stone, saying a silent prayer for her family's safety. "Let's go." Back at the shed, Oliver had barricaded the door with everything he could find. The wolves' howls were getting closer, and the mother bear seemed to sense the danger. Despite her weakness, she tried to rise, her instinct to protect her cub overriding her pain. "Easy, girl," Layla soothed, placing a gentle hand on the bear's massive shoulder. "You'll tear open your wound." The cub sensed the tension and whimpered, pressing closer to Noah. The child, showing wisdom far beyond his years, stroked the cub's fur and murmured softly to it, the same way Oliver often comforted him during thunderstorms. "They have a strong bond," Layla observed, watching the pair. "I've never seen anything like it." Oliver nodded, continuing to reinforce their makeshift barricade. "It's like they understand each other on some level we can't comprehend." "Children often have a special way with animals," Layla said. "They don't carry the same fears and prejudices we adults do. To Noah, that's not a dangerous wild animal. It's just another child who needs comfort." A particularly close howl made them both jump. The mother bear let out a low, warning growl, her eyes fixed on the window. "They're here," Oliver whispered, picking up a heavy wrench from his toolbox, a pitifully inadequate weapon against a wolf pack, but better than nothing. Through the rain-streaked window, dark shapes moved at the edge of the clearing. Yellow eyes reflected the shed's light, blinking in and out of visibility as the wolves circled, assessing the situation. "How many do you count?" Layla asked, her voice steady despite the fear Oliver could see in her eyes. "At least 5, maybe more," he replied grimly. "A full pack." The mother bear struggled again to rise, her maternal instinct driving her to protect her cub despite her injuries. This time, she managed to get to her feet, swaying dangerously but standing nonetheless. "Incredible," Layla breathed. "Her determination is extraordinary." Noah, sensing the shift in energy, stood up as well. The bear cub pressed against his legs, trembling slightly. Without hesitation, Noah placed his small hand on the cub's head in a protective gesture that mirrored his father's stance. Like father, like son, Layla murmured with a small smile, despite their dire situation. Outside, the wolves began to close in, their circular pattern tightening around the shed. One particularly large wolf, presumably the alpha, stepped forward, its gaze fixed on the door. Inside, the radio on Oliver's desk suddenly crackled to life, making everyone jump. Oliver Reed, do you copy? This is Diana. Please respond." His wife's voice, filled with static but recognizable, filled the small space. Oliver lunged for the radio. "Diana, we're here. Where are you?" "Forest Service Station, north of the logging trail," she replied, relief evident in her voice. "Oliver, there are wolves in the area. They might be heading your way." "They're already here," Oliver confirmed grimly. "We're barricaded in the shed, but I don't know how long that will hold. How far out are you with those supplies?" A pause, then Diana's voice again. "We can't get through by road. Too many downed trees, but Elijah Carter is with us. He has an idea." The radio crackled as Elijah's voice took over. "Oliver, listen carefully. There's an old mining tunnel that runs under part of your property. The entrance is about half a mile from your cabin, near the big lightning-struck oak. It comes out close to where you are." Oliver tried to picture the location. "I think I know the oak you mean, but I've never seen any tunnel." "It's overgrown, been closed for decades," Elijah explained. "But it should still be passable. We're heading there now. If we can get through, we'll reach you with the supplies in about 30 minutes. "We may not have 30 minutes, Oliver replied, watching as a wolf began pawing at the shed door. "The wolves are getting bolder." "Hold tight," Diana's voice returned, determination evident despite the static. "We're coming as fast as we can, I promise." The radio went silent. Oliver turned to Layla, who was checking the mother bear's vital signs. "How is she?" Layla's expression was grave. "Hanging on, but barely. The stress of the wolves isn't helping." She nodded toward the window. "They can smell her blood. That's what's drawing them." A thought struck Oliver. What if that's how we buy some time? He moved to his supply shelf and pulled down a container. "This is a fixative I use for developing photos. It has a strong chemical smell that might mask the scent of blood." Layla considered this. "It's worth a try, but be careful. Those chemicals are toxic. We'll need to make sure Noah doesn't breathe too much of it." Oliver nodded, already soaking rags in the pungent solution. He handed one to Layla, then carefully approached Noah and the bear cub. "Hey, buddy," he said gently, kneeling to his son's level. "Dad needs to put something smelly around the room to keep us safe. Can you and your friend come sit in this corner and breathe through this?" He held up a clean cloth. Noah nodded solemnly and guided the bear cub to the designated corner. The small creature followed willingly, seeming to trust the child implicitly. Oliver began hanging the chemical-soaked rags near every crack and opening in the shed. The sharp, acrid smell quickly filled the space, making their eyes water. Outside, the wolves' behavior changed. They backed away from the door, shaking their heads and pawing at their sensitive noses. The chemical odor was working, creating a barrier they were reluctant to cross. "It's buying us time," Layla observed, "but it's also making it hard for us to breathe." The mother bear seemed particularly affected, her breathing becoming more labored in the chemical-laden air. She lay down again, her strength exhausted by the brief standoff. "We need to ration the chemicals," Oliver decided, removing some of the rags. "Just enough to keep them at bay, but not so much that we poison ourselves." A crash of thunder shook the entire shed, and the lights flickered ominously. The storm was intensifying, if that was even possible. Rain hammered against the roof like thousands of tiny fists, and wind howled through every crack and crevice. "Dad?" Noah's small voice cut through the cacophony. He was pointing to the corner where the roof met the wall. Water was beginning to seep through, forming a growing puddle on the floor. "The roof is leaking," Layla said unnecessarily. "If it gets worse—" She didn't need to finish. If the roof gave way, they would be exposed to both the storm and the wolves. Meanwhile, Diana, Hank, and Elijah were fighting their own battle against the elements. They had found the mine entrance, just as Elijah described, but years of neglect had left it in dangerous condition. "Doesn't look too stable," Hank observed, shining his flashlight into the dark tunnel. The beam illuminated rotting support beams and fallen rocks. "It's our only option," Diana insisted. "My family is in danger. We have to try." Elijah nodded, checking the supplies they had gathered from the Forest Service station. Antibiotics, suture kits, bandages, and even a tranquilizer gun, just in case. "Stay close," he instructed. "Step exactly where I step. These old tunnels can be treacherous, especially after all this rain." They entered the darkness, their flashlights creating bouncing circles of light that did little to dispel the oppressive blackness. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, and the distant rumble of thunder was muffled but still audible. "How far does this tunnel go?" Diana asked, her voice echoing slightly. "About a mile," Elijah replied. "It was used to transport silver ore back in the 1880s. Should come out about 100 yards from Oliver's shed." They moved carefully, testing each step before committing their weight. The tunnel sloped gently downward, then began to rise again after several hundred yards. "We're passing under the river now," Elijah informed them. "This is the trickiest part. The ceiling is lower here." As if on cue, a large drop of water fell directly onto Diana's head, followed by another and another. The dripping increased rapidly, turning into a steady flow. "That's not good," Elijah muttered, examining the ceiling with his flashlight. "The river must be overflowing its banks, putting pressure on the tunnel." A loud crack echoed through the passage, and a section of the ceiling collapsed just yards ahead of them, sending rocks and dirt cascading down. "Back!" Elijah shouted, pushing Diana and Hank away from the cave-in. The whole thing could go. They retreated several yards, watching in dismay as more debris fell, partially blocking their path forward. "Now what?" Hank demanded. "We can't go back. Those wolves are still out there." Diana stared at the obstacle, then at the medical supplies in her backpack. Her family was counting on her. The mother bear who had saved her son was dying. Failure wasn't an option. "We dig," she said simply, moving toward the fallen rocks. "We make a way through." Back at the shed, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The roof leak had worsened, creating a steady stream of water that threatened their electrical equipment. Oliver had moved the mother bear away from the worst of it, but the shed was small, and options were limited. The wolves had retreated somewhat due to the chemical smell, but they hadn't left entirely. Their shadowy forms remained visible at the edge of the clearing, waiting patiently for an opportunity. Layla checked the mother bear's wound again, her expression becoming more concerned. "She's developing a fever. Infection is setting in. Without those antibiotics soon." Noah and the bear cub remained in their corner, the child's arm protectively around his new friend. The cub would occasionally whimper and look toward its mother, but seemed content to stay with Noah, drawing comfort from the human child's presence. "They'll make it," Oliver said with more confidence than he felt. "Diana's never let me down." As he spoke, a new sound joined the symphony of rain and wind, a deep, ominous rumbling that seemed to come from beneath their feet. "What is that?" Layla asked, alarm evident in her voice. Before Oliver could respond, the ground literally shifted beneath them. One corner of the shed dropped several inches, sending tools and equipment sliding across the floor. The hillside, Oliver realized with horror. All this rain, it must be causing a landslide. The rumbling increased, and more of the shed began to tilt. The mother bear let out a distressed groan as she slid across the floor. Oliver and Layla scrambled to stabilize her, while Noah clutched the bear cub tightly, his eyes wide with fear. "We have to get out of here," Layla urged. "If that hillside goes, it could take the whole shed with it." "And go where?" Oliver demanded. "Into the storm? With the wolves waiting?" Before Layla could answer, another section of the ground gave way. The entire shed groaned and shifted further, the walls creaking alarmingly. "Dad!" Noah cried, reaching for his father. Oliver rushed to his son, gathering him in his arms. The bear cub stayed pressed against Noah's side, trembling. In the tunnel, Diana, Hank, and Elijah had managed to clear enough debris to create a small passage. Diana, being the smallest, volunteered to go through first. "Be careful," Hank warned. "If more of the ceiling comes down while you're in there." Diana nodded, understanding the risk. "Pass me the supplies. I'll take them through." With a backpack of medical supplies secured, Diana began squeezing through the narrow opening they had created. Dirt and small rocks showered down on her as she wriggled forward, but she pressed on, thinking of Oliver, Noah, and the injured bear waiting for her help. Halfway through, she felt the ground tremble beneath her. A new sound reached her ears, the unmistakable roar of rushing water. "The rivers breached the tunnel," Elijah shouted from behind her. "Diana, hurry!" With renewed desperation, Diana pushed forward, scraping her arms and back on the jagged rocks. Water began seeping around her feet, quickly rising. With one final effort, she thrust herself through the opening, tumbling onto the tunnel floor on the other side. "I'm through," she called back. "But there's water coming in fast. The tunnel won't hold much longer." Elijah's voice was barely audible over the growing roar. "You need to get to the exit before the whole thing floods." "What about you two?" Diana cried, horrified at the thought of leaving them behind. "We'll try to find another way around," Hank responded. "Get those supplies to the bear. Go, Diana, now!" With tears mixing with the muddy water on her face, Diana turned and began racing through the tunnel toward the exit, the precious backpack clutched to her chest. The water rose with each step, soon reaching her ankles, then her calves. The tunnel began to slope upward, giving her hope that she was nearing the exit. The roar of water grew fainter behind her as she climbed, suggesting she might be outrunning the worst of the flood. Finally, a glimmer of gray light appeared ahead. The exit, partially obscured by overgrown vegetation, but definitely there. Diana pushed through the tangled undergrowth, emerging into the stormy night just as a tremendous crash echoed from the tunnel behind her. The mine had collapsed completely. "Hank, Elijah!" She called uselessly into the howling wind, knowing they couldn't possibly hear her, hoping desperately they had found another way out. Orienting herself, Diana spotted the shed about 100 yards away, just as Elijah had promised. But something was wrong. The building appeared to be tilting at an odd angle. With a surge of fear, she realized part of the hillside beneath it was giving way. Clutching the medical supplies, Diana sprinted toward the shed, heedless of the mud that threatened to pull her down with each step. As she ran, she caught movement from the corner of her eye. The wolves had spotted her and were beginning to converge on her position. "Oliver!" she screamed, pushing herself to run faster. "Oliver!" Inside the listing shed, Oliver heard his wife's voice through the howling wind. "Diana?" He rushed to the window, hardly daring to believe it. There she was, running toward them through the rain, a pack of wolves closing in behind her. "She made it!" he cried to Layla. "But the wolves—" Without hesitation, Oliver grabbed the chemical-soaked rags and thrust them through a crack in the door. The potent smell might buy Diana a few precious seconds of deterrence. Then he flung the door open, ready to rush out and help her. But another violent shift of the ground beneath the shed sent him tumbling backward. The entire building groaned and slid several more feet down the hillside. Diana saw the shed lurch and redoubled her efforts, her lungs burning as she sprinted the final yards. The wolves were gaining, the alpha just feet behind her. In a moment that would later seem like divine intervention, the mother bear inside the shed suddenly found one last reserve of strength. With a roar that shook the air itself, she thrust herself to her feet and charged through the open door, directly toward the pursuing wolves. The alpha wolf skidded to a halt, confronted by 400 pounds of maternal fury. Despite her injuries, despite her weakness, the mother bear was a force of nature, and the wolves knew it. They scattered, retreating back to the forest edge. Diana didn't question her miraculous rescue. She dashed past the swaying bear and into the shed, collapsing into Oliver's arms. "The supplies," she gasped, holding up the backpack. "I got them." Layla immediately took the pack, pulling out the antibiotics and surgical supplies. "Just in time," she said, already preparing an injection. Outside, the mother bear remained standing guard, swaying dangerously but refusing to back down. The wolves kept their distance, unwilling to challenge her despite her obvious weakness. "She's protecting us," Oliver whispered in awe. "Even now, she's protecting all of us." Noah pulled away from his father and moved toward the door, the bear cub still at his side. He stopped just inside the threshold, watching his unlikely guardian with solemn eyes. Diana knelt beside her son, wrapping her arms around him. "I made it back," she murmured, pressing his worry stone back into his small hand. "Just like I promised." The ground shifted again, more violently this time. The shed lurched sickeningly, sliding further down the eroding hillside. "We can't stay here," Oliver stated the obvious. "This whole structure is going to collapse." Layla looked up from administering medicine to the mother bear. "I've given her antibiotics and something for the pain, but moving her in this condition—" "We don't have a choice," Diana said firmly. "If we stay, we all die." Oliver nodded, his mind racing. "The main cabin. If we can get there, we'll be safe. It's built on bedrock, not this loose soil." "How do we get past the fallen tree blocking the door?" Layla asked. "There's a cellar entrance on the far side," Oliver explained. "We can get in that way." Another violent lurch emphasized the urgency of their situation. Parts of the shed's floor were beginning to pull away from the walls. "Let's go," Oliver decided. "Diana, take Noah. Layla and I will help the mother bear. The cub will follow Noah, I'm sure of it." They moved quickly, gathering only the essential medical supplies. The ground continued to shift beneath them as they maneuvered the groggy but cooperative mother bear toward the door. Outside, the rain had finally begun to slacken, though the wind remained fierce. The wolves had retreated to the forest edge but remained visible, watching and waiting. The small group made their way carefully down what remained of the hill, helping the mother bear navigate the treacherous terrain. Noah walked between his parents, one hand holding his mother's, the other resting on the bear cub's head. Behind them, with a final groan of protesting metal and wood, the shed tore free from its remaining anchors and slid down the hillside, crashing into pieces at the bottom. "That was close," Diana breathed, holding Noah tighter. They continued toward the cabin, moving as quickly as the injured bear could manage. The wolves followed at a distance, a constant reminder of the dangers still present. Almost there, Oliver encouraged everyone as the cabin came into view. The fallen tree was visible, its massive trunk having crushed part of the front porch but leaving the main structure intact. As they approached the cellar doors, a sound made them all pause, voices calling from the direction of the logging trail. "Hello, Diana, Oliver? It's Hank," Diana exclaimed with relief. They made it. Sure enough, Hank and Elijah emerged from the tree line, muddy and exhausted, but very much alive. They stopped short at the sight that greeted them. Two adults helping an injured bear walk, a child and bear cub walking side by side, and the family cabin half blocked by a fallen tree. "I'll be damned," Elijah muttered. "When you said a bear saved your boy, I believed you, but seeing this—" "No time for explanations," Oliver called to them. "We need to get inside before those wolves decide to try their luck again." Together, they managed to open the cellar doors and guide the mother bear down the stairs. No small feat given her size and condition. The bear cub followed willingly, still staying close to Noah. Once inside, they secured the doors behind them and made their way up to the main floor of the cabin. The space was mercifully intact, though the front windows had shattered when the tree hit the porch. Layla immediately set about creating a proper treatment area for the mother bear, who had collapsed again once safely inside. The antibiotics were beginning to work, but she would need careful monitoring and additional treatment to fully recover. "Will she be okay?" Noah asked, his small voice filled with concern. Layla smiled at him gently. "I think she will, thanks to you and your parents. She's very strong and very brave, just like you." The bear cub had settled beside its mother, occasionally nuzzling her face as if checking on her. Noah sat nearby, watching with the intense focus only a child can maintain. As the adults worked to secure the cabin and tend to the bear, Diana pulled Oliver aside. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "When the storm passes and she recovers, we can't keep them here." Oliver nodded, watching his son and the bears with mixed emotions. "I know. Layla mentioned a wildlife sanctuary that might take them. They could recover there, away from hunters and development. And Noah? He's bonded with that cub. Separating them will be difficult." Oliver pulled his wife close, both of them watching their son. "We'll help him understand, and maybe we can visit them sometimes." Outside, the storm was finally beginning to subside. The first hints of dawn lightened the eastern sky, promising a new day. The wolves had disappeared, either discouraged by the human success in reaching safety or moving on to easier prey. Inside the cabin, an extraordinary family had formed, not of blood, but of circumstance and compassion. A mother bear who had saved a human child, a human family who had risked everything to save her in return, and the innocent bond between a boy and a bear cub that had somehow bridged the ancient divide between their worlds. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the broken windows, the mother bear's eyes opened. She looked first at her cub, then at the humans who had fought so hard to save her life. In her gaze was a depth of understanding that defied explanation, a recognition that transcended language and species. Noah caught her look and smiled, reaching out a small hand toward her. The mother bear didn't move, but something in her posture softened, accepting his gesture from a distance. "I think she remembers," Oliver said softly. "She knows what we did for her, just as we remember what she did for Noah." Diana wiped tears from her eyes. Some things don't need explanation. Some connections just are. The storm had passed, but the events of that extraordinary night would remain with all of them forever, a testament to the unexpected bridges that can form between the most unlikely companions when compassion overcomes fear and the instinct to protect transcends the boundaries of species. 3 weeks later, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the meadow of the Northern Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary. Oliver adjusted his camera lens, capturing the moment as the sanctuary staff opened the large wooden crate. Noah stood between his parents, clutching both their hands, his eyes never leaving the crate's door. "Remember what we talked about, sweetie," Diana whispered, kneeling beside her son. "They need to be free. This is their home now." Noah nodded solemnly, though his chin trembled slightly. The past 3 weeks had been extraordinary. The mother bear had recovered in their cabin under Layla's care, growing stronger each day. The bear cub had become Noah's constant companion, the two playing under careful supervision, forming a bond that defied every natural law. But today was goodbye. The mother bear emerged first, her powerful form now healthy and strong. The wound on her side had healed into a scar, a permanent reminder of the night that had changed all their lives. She paused at the crate's entrance, sniffing the air cautiously before taking a few steps forward. The bear cub bounded out next, initially staying close to its mother, then darting about to explore its new surroundings. The sanctuary staff stood at a respectful distance, giving the bears space to acclimate. "They'll be happy here," Layla assured them. 300 acres of protected forest, no hunters, plenty of food. Oliver nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He continued taking photos, knowing these moments needed to be preserved, not just for his family, but for everyone. Their story had spread throughout the region, changing hearts and minds about wildlife conservation in ways no lecture or campaign ever could. Hank Wilson, who stood nearby, had become the bear's fiercest advocate. The game warden, who once would have followed protocol without question, had personally overseen the creation of new guidelines for human-wildlife interaction. "Never seen anything like it," he murmured, watching as the bears explored. "Makes you wonder how much we don't understand about them." The mother bear paused in her exploration, her head lifting as she caught a familiar scent. She turned, her eyes finding Noah among the humans. For a long moment, they regarded each other across the meadow, a child and a bear, connected by an act of courage that had saved them both. Then, to everyone's surprise, the bear began walking toward them. The sanctuary staff tensed, ready to intervene, but Layla held up her hand. "Wait," she said quietly. "Let's see." Diana tightened her grip on Noah's hand, maternal instinct warring with the trust that had grown over these weeks. Oliver lowered his camera, his heart pounding. The mother bear stopped about 20 feet away, a respectful distance that somehow acknowledged the complex relationship between them. She made a soft chuffing sound, and the cub, which had been playing nearby, immediately ran to her side. Noah looked up at his parents, his blue eyes wide with question. After exchanging a glance with Diana, Oliver nodded. "Go ahead," he said softly, "but stay right where we can see you." Noah took a few small steps forward, stopping halfway between his parents and the bears. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small round stone, a new worry stone that Diana had helped him find, a companion to